In this video, we are going to talk about classification of soil, how soils are being classified. So soils are classified in terms of residual and transported. So they either tend to be residual soils or transported soils. Let's take them one by one and discuss. So what do we mean when we say a soil is a residual soil? So these particular soils they are formed in place, never transported away from the parent rock. What this means is that if I have a rock, a rock mass, if I have a rock mass, and this rock mass tends to disintegrate or undergo chemical weathering to form sediments, known as what? Uncemented sediments known as what? Soil. If these soils are formed in place or are not being transported, if they are formed or they are deposited at the same place where they were formed, then this soil is termed as what? Residual soil. So residual soils, they are the layer of soils that form directly from weathering and decomposition of underlying parent rocks in its original location. So they do not move, they are not being what transported. They also lie on top of the parent rock. So they will lie on top of what? Or around what? The parent rock. They are not never what transported. These soils are termed as residual soils. What are the characteristics of the soil? On what basis will you determine that a soil is what? A residual soil? What are the characteristics of soil termed being residual soil? So soil grains are irregular. So the soil grains are irregular with sharp edges. So the soils being formed here, they are what's irregular and they have sharp edges. They are irregular and have sharp edges. Moreover, the mineral contents of residual soils closely match that of the parent rock. So when you check the mineral composition of this residual soil and you compare it to the mineral composition of the parent rock, they are they closely match. Moreover, the texture similar to that of parent rock. So these residual soils have textures that are similar to the parent rock. They contain fragments of the original rock. So this is the original rock. The soils being formed, known as the residual soils, contains fragments of the original rock. Soil grains are irregular with sharp edges, as I've explained. They also exhibit sorting of particle size with depth. They exhibit sorting of particle size with depth. Residual soils also obey the uniform horizontality, that they are being deposited horizontal. They are being deposited horizontally. And one characteristic of residual soil again is that the soil profile remains above the parent rock. The soil profile. The soil profile remains above that of the parent rock. Examples of residual soil, we have laterite. So laterite is an example of a residual soil. Again, we also have saprolite. Saprolite is also so these two are examples of residual soil. A granitic residual soil. So you realize that the soil has the the same color just as they were the parent rock. They are not being what they've never been transported. So they are the characteristics of the soil and that of the parent rock closely match. Profile of a residual soil. On top of the profile is where we have the humus or the topsoil. So we have soil, the humus or the topsoil over here. We have let's start from, so we have fresh rock. This is the fresh rock, then slightly weathered, then you move towards moderately weathered, the rocks become highly weathered, they become completely weathered, then now you move to they finally form soil, and on top is where we have the humus, or also known and what the top soil. So we have a bedrock. This bedrock tends to weather slightly. Now it tends to weather moderately. It tends to weather highly. Then finally, it completely weathered forms soil. So that's the residual soil profile. And they are usually above that of the parent rock. So this is the soil profile, right? And the parent rock is the fresh rock, which will be below here. So that's why I initially said the residual soil profile will be above that of the parent rock. Another classification of soil is what we term as transported soil, basically opposite that of residual soil. So when soils are being transported away from their parent rock, they are being carried away. When they are being carried away from their parent rock, we term those soils as transported soils. So the soils are being transported, that's being moved from its place of origin to a new location by natural agents such as water, wind, ice, gravity. So these transported soils are being deposited in, so they are being deposited in what? A different location, often resulting in a soil composition that differs from the what? The local bedrock. So let's say this is our bedrock. The soil initially the soil being formed are what are being, let's say, residual. Okay, so when these soils are being transported by agents such as agents such as gravity, ice, water, they tend to move away from the parent rock. That's what we call that's what we classify the soils as what? Transported soils. Let's discuss some of the characteristics of transported soil. So the characteristics of transported soil. So one, sorting of particles is common with finer particles being carried further than coarser ones. Sorting of particles is common with finer particles being carried further than coarser ones. What this means is that as the rocks are being transported, the coarser ones tends to settle while the finer ones are carried further away. So let's say these are rock fragments being moved by agents, okay? The coarser ones tends to settle first, then as it moves, the finer ones will also tend to what? Will also tend, so it forms something like this. So it characterizes of, so as it moves, the finer ones tends to also settle. So the finer ones are carried further away compared to the coarser ones. Heterogeneous soil profile. So one another characteristic is what a heterogeneous soil profile. A heterogeneous soil profile. So another characteristic of soil, transported soil is what soil. So transported soil also exhibits a wide range of textures, and they are usually different from that of the parent rock. Also, you see, initially in residual soils, we did mention that they have sharp edges. They have sharp edges and are irregular. Transported soils are usually what? Are usually Transported soils are usually rounded. Transported soils are usually rounded. Let's discuss the types of transported soil. So the type of transported soils are based on their mode of transportation. So the mode of transportation paves way for the types known as the alluvial, the lacustrine, the glacial, and what have you. So let's discuss them. What do we mean when we say an alluvial soil? So alluvial soils, they are formed by deposition of sediments carried by rivers and streams, typically found in floodplains, river deltas, and alluvial fans. So when the soils are being transported by river or they are being deposited based That's when river and stream transports the soil, then we classify the soil as an alluvial soil. So when the mode of transportation is by the lake, then the soil is described as a lacustrine soil. So lacustrine soils form from deposits in a lake environment. These soils are typically characterized by fine particles such as clay, silt, and fine sand, which settle out of what? They settle out of suspension in relatively still water of lake. Right. That's for lacustrine soil. Let's talk about glacial soils, more of glacier deposited. They are formed by the action of glaciers, which grind and transport rock debris. Includes what? Till, that's unsorted material deposits directly by ice, and outwash, that's out that's sorted material deposited by what? Meltwater. So when the soil is usually transported by glacier, we are term that soil as what? Glacial soils. Now with marine soil, so deposited in what? Marine, they are deposited in marine environment. So marine soil refers to the sedimentary material that accumulates at the bottom of what? Like at the bottom of water bodies such as oceans, seas, and gulls. Marine soils usually what? So as the name suggests, wind deposited, so formed by wind action, typically consisting of fine particles like silt and sand. Examples include the examples include the dune, examples include the dune and the loess. The dune and the loess. The dune and the loess are associated with the Aeolian soils. Finally, the colluvial soil deposited at the base of mountains. So they are formed by gravity or they are gravity driven processes such as landslides or soil creep, often found at the base of slopes and hills. They are typically unsorted. They are typically not sorted and heterogeneous in composition. That's for colluvial soils. So this an assignment. You can also do that and submit. This you are supposed to describe the mode of formation of this soil. What's the mode of formation of this soil? We have what we call sorting, the degree of uniformity in the size of sediment. That's basically what we mean by sorting. And this happens usually within a sedimentary deposit. Sorting indicates how well the particles are distributed according to what their side ranges. So under sorting, we can classify soils as either well sorted or poorly poorly sorted. Well sorted is also known as well sorted is also known as poorly graded. Well sorted is also known as poorly graded. While poorly sorted is also known as what? Well graded. It's well sorted sediments. They have their particles relatively uniform in size, relatively uniform particles. They suggest the sediments were deposited in an environment with consistent energy level. So under well sorted, the energy level the energy level is consistent. The energy level is consistent, where only narrow range of particle sizes could be transported and deposited. So now under poorly sorted sediments contains wide range of particle sizes. So they contain wide range of particle sizes. So bigger ones, smaller ones, finer ones, all in one sedimentary basin. This indicates the position environment with variable energy. So this well under poorly sorted we have what? Variable energy, variable energy level, allowing for the transportation. Glacial deposits and alluvial fans are examples of poorly sorted sediment, right? So what basically we are saying is that under well sorted sediment, we have the
sediments are of uniform sizes. The sediments are of uniform sizes. So this is what we can classify this as what? Well sorted, well sorted, or poorly graded. Poorly graded in the sense that there we do not see different types of different grades of what or different sizes of soil of sediments. They are all of the same what uniform or let's say similar sizes. But under poorly sorted, you have a soil, you having larger soils with smaller or finer soil. So different soil or different grain sizes. So this soil is poorly sorted but well graded. Well graded in the sense that it consists of sizes, different sizes of soil. Now let's take another assignment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the link of the channel to your colleagues so that they can also benefit. Anytime videos are being uploaded, you'll be notified as well. See you in the next video.